Hey girls, we're almost ready. So about 1 till, if y'all can start letting people in. And as usual, let's don't let anyone in after 10 after, hopefully not even unless you recognize somebody. We won't
Okay.
let people in.
Okay.
We've planned a flyover of a bald eagle on the half hour. And we planned some loons to call out at multiple times. So just be ready.
You want them to
Cool.
in the waiting room saying,
Yeah, if somebody can put a message in the waiting room and just say, we'll start in just a few minutes.
I see it now, Carissa. There's just 2 people in the waiting room.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I just put a message. We couldn't see it because I don't think anyone had joined yet in the waiting room. So
Exactly. Yeah.
got it.
It takes someone to join before you can do a message.
Is whatever is on that stream or that screen what they're seeing?
Yep, the big, the big one.
The big picture.
Mhm.
Nice.
All right, we're gonna go mute again.
It's 1 minute till, so just let us know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Only 5. Okay. Because you're like a bunch of glaciers. I'm like,
Hey everyone, come on in. We are so excited to have you here today for our final live stream of the season. Our moderators today are ready to take your questions. So as you come in, please drop in where you're coming from. It is about 60 degrees, I think, right now here, or 55. So we're glad you're here. We're going to start in just a few seconds. Hey everyone, this is Dr. Drizzle and welcome to our final live stream of the year. We are in Glacier National Park. So pull out those journals, get those maps ready. You've got some metadata at the top of the screen. The temperature here is 55 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, we are at Glacier National Park in Montana. We are so excited to introduce you to amazing rangers today. But we do want to acknowledge that this is live stream number 8 for this year. So let's take a quick look at where we have been.
Welcome to Crossing America. Expeditions in Education, in collaboration with the National Park Foundation, is bringing national parks live to students all over the country. More than 100,000 students have tuned in, from Hawaii volcanoes to Olympic, Acadia to the Everglades, Rocky Mountains to Big Cypress, and more. And they're not just watching. They're helping rangers solve real problems, from invasive species to climate change. Our love for the parks is huge, and our students are falling in love with them every day. Get ready. Another adventure starts now. Let's do this.
How exciting. We've been to the National Mall this year, Mammoth Cave. We hosted Holiday in the Parks with 25 national parks showing up. We've been to the Everglades, we went to Voyageurs, New River Gorge, Rocky Mountains, and a week later, we are here today at Glacier National Park. Just a few housekeeping rules. Make sure that you keep your volume muted. If you have a question, teachers, please make sure you drop those into the chat window and our host will pick those up. This is also contest day. So we have a contest happening today. The school that has the most teachers logging in today is going to receive a free day of STEM with Dr. Drizzle. I hope you're excited about that. We are, and that'll happen in the 25-26 school year. Rangers, are you ready?
We're ready.
We're ready. Well, Ranger Matt, we're going to start with you. How exciting to be in this place. Thank you for the weather. We've also asked for some animals to show up here, but we really want to know about the geology of this place. So we're standing on rocks. There are beautiful rocks in the water behind us, but let's talk about what types of rocks we'll find here at Glacier.
Yeah, sure. Well, first off, welcome to Glacier National Park. When you come to Glacier National Park, and if anybody asks you what type of rocks you're seeing, just automatically reply sedimentary. Almost every rock inside the park is a sedimentary rock. And those rocks are formed through a process of layering sediment through a process called deposition. And so deposition is just another word for putting down or layering sediment over and over and over. A sediment could be anything from like sand or rock or silt or clay or to even mud. And so the sediment that was laid down that formed our sedimentary rocks that we see today were deposited a long time ago. So somewhere scientists think about approximately about 1.5 billion years ago, when at that time, this area of North America didn't look like it does today. We would be underwater right now. We'd be covered beneath a shallow, warm sea known as the Belt Sea. So during the time when the Belt Sea was here, it was depositing sediment on the sea floor. And over time, those layers built and built and built and eventually turned into the rocks that we see in the park today. So one of the cool things about Glacier, hiking in Glacier, is when you're out and about in the park, you can see evidence of this Belt Sea. And I think we have a couple rocks with us today that I can hold up and show. But geologists will use rocks like this to kind of help them piece together the puzzle, the geologic puzzle here at Glacier, and help us tell the story. So here's one rock that we have here that you'll find on a lot of the trails as you hike up into the mountains here in Glacier. And I'll just hold that up for a second and let you take a look and take a second to make an observation. What are you noticing when you look at that rock?
So I'm noticing that there's these grooves in here, or these striations.
Sure. Yeah, and so we'll call this a ripple mark, or pardon me, a ripple rock. And it kind of reminds me of like flowing water, or maybe if you've ever spent time on a sandy beach, how the water comes in and out on the shoreline and will move those sediments or sand around. So we have a lot of that evidence throughout the park of the Belt Sea. Another type of rock that we have that we use here, or that we talk a lot about, is this type of rock. So I'm going to hold that up for a second and let you make an observation. And I can even flip it to the other side there as well. Yeah. And so,
Very smooth.
yeah, very smooth and some lines and some cracks. So this is what we call a mud crack rock. So very similar to like maybe a mud puddle that dries up, that mud is wet, it dries up and starts to split. Same thing, that sediment over time that was laid down by the Belt Sea, as that sea receded, that sediment dried, turned to mud, and then eventually cracked and formed into rock.
So if they were sketching these rocks in their journal right now, they have this mud crack rock, and then they have the ripple.
Yes.
Right. And then I noticed there's a lot of rocks in this lake here, and they're beautiful colors. So are we sort of seeing the same type of rock here?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, same, like I said, almost every rock in the park is a sedimentary rock. Different colors, just different, the ways it formed, different times, maybe different materials and minerals in there as well. So when we think about the glacier, pardon me, geology of glacier, the Belt Sea was laying that sediment down pretty much on the sea floor, right, at sea level. So how do we go from having sediment that turned into rock at the sea floor to up on top of the mountains like we have today? So do you, I thought you had a question, sorry. Do you, if you want to take a second, maybe think about some forces that may, like natural forces that may cause mountains. So we'll take a second to think about that, and we'll talk about how the sediment went from the ocean floor to the mountaintops.
So make your guesses, put those into the chat window. How were these mountains formed? Now, mountains are formed in different ways and depending on where we are in the country. So I'm really eager to find out about these.
Yeah, great. So I don't know if anybody out there has ever heard of the word plate tectonics. That's kind of maybe a big science word there, but the Earth's crust is just broken down into smaller, slow-moving plates that are moving around constantly. As these plates move around, they can either do a couple different things. They can either collide into each other, they can pull apart or push away, or they can move side by side. So depending on how those plates are interacting with each other, you could either get earthquakes, you could start to get landforms forming, such as our mountains here. And that's what happened in this part of North America about 150 million years ago off the west coast of what is now North America. We had two plates that collided. The result of that collision was one plate slid underneath the other one. And as that was sliding, there was a lot of pressure and building up. And as that pressure built up, that top layer of crust began to buckle and bend and uplift into the mountains that we see in the park today.
So can we all do that? Can we put our hands on top of each other? So talk us through that again as we make this happen.
Totally. So we'll use our imagination here. Our hands are our tectonic plates. They're colliding. And it has to give, right? As you push really hard on your fingers, something kind of, you can feel that pressure on your fingers. And what eventually happened was one of those plates weighed more than the other, pushed the lighter plate down, and then began to slide up and over top of the other one. So I think the scientific word there is subduction.
Yes.
So going beneath. And as that plate pushed down, that put pressure on the top layer of crust, and that began to form the mountains that we see today.
And I can also almost feel that with my knuckles moving up. Another way to do that is with a little Snickers bar. So if you take the little Snickers bar and you open it up, one side kind of goes in under the other, and you have this beautiful mountain, and then you can eat it.
Oh, totally. It
So
sounds
Did you
you
bring
didn't-
us Snickers bars
No, there
today?
are no
Okay.
Snickers bars here. Very interesting about the rocks.
awesome. Yeah,
Anything else you want to share about rocks before we move into something else here?
I think that's all I had to share. So thanks.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So in your journal, you should have sketches of your rocks. That word subduction would be a great word. There are multiple words that we use when plate tectonics move. Sometimes the plates slide. So do some research on that and talk about or find out what types of plates, the movement of those plates form what type of landforms. Emily, I think we're coming to you next. So this place is called Glacier National Park. So I'm assuming there has to be some connection to the word glacier. So how did glaciers form this park?
Yeah, actually, this is my favorite part of the geology because it's probably the most evident that you can see today. So we had, after what Matt described of those sedimentary rocks being laid down and then kind of pushed up, the glaciers, some people refer to them as like the architects of the park, carving the shapes that we see today. So what is a glacier? Well, it's basically just a sedimentary rock, but instead of being made of sediment, it's made of snow and ice. So you get layers and layers of snow building on top of each other, and they eventually become so heavy that the glacier, the big ice chunk, starts to move. So a glacier is simply ice that moves. And back in the Ice Age, like 2 million to about 12,000 years ago, they had lots of periods of these glaciers forming and shrinking and forming and shrinking and forming and shrinking. And they continued to carve out the landscape that you see behind me today. So for example, Lake McDonald Valley, where we're standing right now, this lake is about almost 500 feet deep at the deepest part. It's like 472. And that is because it was carved by one of these moving rivers of ice. As it grew and grew, it started way up in the mountains and grew and came all the way to where we're standing right now, receded back, another one came and filled. So if you can imagine a wall of ice a couple thousand years ago filling this entire valley, it'd be at least half a mile tall. I mean, at least a mile wide. We're talking a huge, huge piece of ice. And I actually have a demonstration here, kind of a side profile of what a glacier might look like. So you can kind of imagine how they form. Here at the very bottom of the glacier, you can see it maybe picks up boulders or small rocks that are on the bottom. Maybe imagine playing with an ice cube in the dirt, right? That ice cube would have some stuff stick to it. Then this fluffy stuff at the top is, of course, the snow. But as you get more and more layers of snow, it starts to get squished down together into harder ice. So sometimes it has this bluish color, and eventually, once there's enough stacked up, it'll start to move under its own weight. And that's, again, what makes it a glacier. So those glaciers of the Ice Age long ago carved the shapes we see, like the U-shaped valley. They carved the pointed tippy tops of the mountains. So Lindsay can help me demonstrate here. Imagine we have a mountain sticking up out of the river of ice, and then I'm going to be a glacier with this fist, and Lindsay's going to be a glacier on this fist, and you end up with this really steep eroded ridge line, just like at the very back of the valley right behind us. It's called the Garden Wall. You end up with three-sided mountains. So if we do it again, but add another hand, imagine a glacier on each side. That's called a horn. So all of these shapes that we see behind us were carved by the glaciers of long ago.
So are these glaciers that we see today the same ones that carved?
Yeah, great question. They're actually not. So behind me, you see a lot of snow up on the mountains, but there are no active glaciers visible from this side of the park. We do still have 26 active glaciers here in the park, but they're way smaller than the one that would have filled this big valley. Typically, it has to be about the size of 25 football fields or 25 acres in order to have enough weight to move. But a lot of them are tucked on the other side of those mountains in high, kind of shady regions. There's one by that steep horn over there, but we can't see any from where we're at today. But that's what our park is named for. And those glaciers only started forming about 6,000 or 7,000 years ago and reached their biggest size only in like 1850 and have been shrinking ever since then. But those 25 active glaciers are where we, or excuse me, 26 are where we get our park's name.
So let's talk about time for just a minute. Ranger Matt mentioned millions of years ago and several billions in some space, and you just said 7,000. That's a huge amount of time. But in scientist years, in geology years, sometimes that's not very long ago, right? That just 7,000 years, but this is what it formed. How cool is this? Now, we know that we don't have as many glaciers. In fact, there was a news show just a couple of years ago that named 37 glaciers. So 4 years after that, you're saying that there's only 26.
Yeah, the last survey where they did the big count, and Lindsay will talk more about this in a bit, only 26 of them are still actively moving. And we're talking like inches or feet per year, right? They're not moving at the speed of a car or the speed that we can walk. It's very slow movement, and Lindsay will talk more about how they measure that, our scientists here at the park. But one reason we know the glaciers are still active and still scraping the rock underneath them is because of the beautiful colors in our water that people come here to see. This lake, maybe not so much, it's a bigger one, but some of the lakes that are right up tucked under a glacier, they have this crazy like turquoise blue-green color. And that's because it has tiny, tiny particles of rock that were carved by that glacier moving on the mountain underneath it into tiny little pieces of flour that are so light they don't even sink. So it just gets stuck in the water and bounces back to your eye as this amazing blue-green color.
I love that. And I love that all of this ties in together, this geology, these glaciers. You guys are park rangers, right? So you interpret this park, you educate people about this park, but there's also scientists and other careers here. So Ranger Lindsay, let's talk a little bit about how do scientists study these glaciers? Are they climbing up to the top of them? Tell me all about this.
Yeah. So, I mean, studying a glacier and getting out into, the places where these glaciers are, like Emily said, they're often tucked away in smaller valleys and kind of places that are hard to get, that have, really long hikes to get to them. So they can't get to every single glacier all the time. So there's a couple different ways that scientists will study the glaciers here in the park. So first of all, like one of the ways that they look at them is through satellite imagery. So, things you can see from up above, satellites, they can measure the size of the glaciers. And so that's one of the ways that we know, kind of based on the size is partly how they estimate, and then also there's other evidence, but how They know if that glacier is an active glacier, is moving, if it, is a certain size. And so they can take, one image from one time and then look at another image from later on and be like, oh, how much has that glacier shrunk? But just looking at the kind of boundaries of it doesn't tell you, the full story. And, they can estimate like with a lot of accuracy. I'm always so surprised at hearing, just how much accuracy there is in figuring out, the dimensions of a glacier, how big it is that way. But another way that scientists will look at it, that's more of we call it qualitative. So like quantitative is, your measurements, but qualitative that you can see is through repeat photography. So we have a lot of photos of glaciers from, back in the 1930s, when there were more active glaciers. And scientists have figured out they can go back to, they can go back to the same place and take a picture from the same area. So for example, this is a glacier called Sperry Glacier. Oh, and I can pass some of these down if you want to take a look at them and hold them up. But you can see, for example, in this image of Sperry Glacier, we've got this image from 1930. There's a lot of ice in this image. And then the same image, they actually couldn't take it from exactly the same vantage point because I think the person taking this photo was up on the glacier ice. Here, there's no glacier in this this frame. So Sperry Glacier is still there, but it just has retreated so much that it's not in that same frame. And so this, even though it's like just taking a picture, it's a really great way to kind of compare how things change. And I think one of these, this is kind of cool because you can see Jackson Glacier, it's shrunk a lot. So here it's taken up this whole frame, again, from the same place. Here it's over here. And we can see other kinds of like changes and stuff like that, like more kind of plants and stuff growing there. So you can see kind of other changes too, not just changes in the glacier from this glacier photography, the repeat photography. So that's something pretty cool to be able to go and see that. And we've got a lot of info on our website and kind of some of these images. So if you compare to a historic image, and I know I've thought about doing that myself I know I've hiked to Grinnell Glacier before. And I think if I go up there this year, I'm hoping to take, another picture of the same glacier and see how it looks a little bit different. So that's one way.
So we're actually holding a couple too. This is Grinnell. This is the one that you hike up to.
I have hiked up to that one. That's one that has a trail that is more of a day hike. It'll be a little hard this year because Many Glacier has some parking things, but that's one of the easier ones to get to.
And this is also
another view of Grinnell. Matt's got Jackson Glacier that Emily has. That is one that you can actually see from Going to the Sun Road. So if you come to the park when it's open to, the Alpine section is open to Jackson Glacier Overlook, you can actually look over and see Jackson Glacier from the road. So these are, some of the glaciers. And then Sperry Glacier, I'll talk about in particular because just doing this, we can't learn everything about a glacier. So Sperry Glacier is very special. And Sperry Glacier is one that is one of a couple of benchmark glaciers where scientists from the U.S. Geological Survey who work with us here at Glacier National Park, they go to Sperry Glacier twice a year, every year. So they can't get to every single glacier twice a year, but they'll do a lot of measurements on Sperry Glacier. So they hike up to the glacier, usually kind of end of the spring earlier in spring when the seasonal snowpack is at its peak, and they dig pits in the snow, and from that they can figure out how dense the snow is. They can figure out how much snow is on the glacier, and they'll put these stakes in, and they put like a stake in the ground, and they'll kind of figure out from that when they come back in the fall, depending on how much of that stake is exposed, they'll figure out how much the glacier has melted. Because every year, as Emily was saying, the snowpack will add on to the glacier, kind of some of that compacts. And usually you have, and I'll put these, I think we can put these down for now. I'll pass that here. So as you, the glacier the seasonal snowpack melts off, and usually there's like up higher elevation, if it's in like on a mountainside, higher elevation, there's more snowpack that'll kind of, the glacier will grow on that side, and then it'll shrink kind of in this kind of further down. And usually they're kind of moving down the mountain. So they're shrinking here and growing here. And so scientists will figure out, okay, how much like mass, so like how much snow and ice was added to the glacier over the winter, and then how much melts off. And they can figure out from that how the glacier is actually changing. So yeah, we got three ways. We got the satellite images, we got the repeat photography, and then we've got what they call the glacier mass balance that they do with Sperry Glacier, but that they aren't able to do with all the other glaciers. But that can tell us a lot about how the glaciers are changing.
So if kids are interested in doing this, if they love rocks, If they
Oh,
love snow, if they
yeah.
love climbing, these are jobs that they can have when they finish
Totally.
school.
Yeah.
So they can strap on some of the little spikes on their boots and they can climb up and do this measurement.
Yeah.
Really important, right?
Of
Such
course.
important work because the glaciers are important
Mhm.
and they're disappearing. So let's talk about what are the future of the glaciers in this park?
Yeah, so Glacier National Park, you might notice, we have glaciers. They're a lot smaller than some glaciers, say, up in Alaska, and they look a little bit different. These alpine glaciers are pretty small and they're shrinking. So as Emily had mentioned, we have a lot fewer glaciers today than we did when the park was established, especially at the end of what we call the Little Ice Age in 1850. And those glaciers are shrinking. And one of the ways that glaciers are, important, especially in this ecosystem here at Glacier National Park, is that they are, like I said, they're kind of building and then melting every year. So even once the seasonal snowpack melts off, like in August, because the glaciers are, this mass that generally sticks around, there is a constant supply of cold meltwater that's coming from that glacier. And that cold meltwater is important for so many different animals. There's the meltwater stonefly is a little, we call it a stonefly. It's like an insect kind of, that's a great food source for a lot of native fish. And the meltwater stonefly needs that really cold water coming from the glaciers. That water is also important for plants, for animals, for kind of, making sure there's fire, not as much fire, at the end of the season, that things aren't super dry. And so as the glaciers melt, which, I know 26 glaciers was as of 2015. There, I know at some point soon, there'll hopefully be another count of like how many of those are still active. And as those glaciers shrink, there'll be less of that cold meltwater that we can count on in August and kind of end of the season, which will have consequences for so many things here in Glacier National Park. And it's also kind of sad to see, seeing those pictures, seeing this big mass of ice that's carving the rock and seeing that disappear is pretty sad. But as well, like that kind of lack of cold meltwater at the end of the season is going to have a lot of implications for a lot of different species in ways that are still kind of becoming clear. There's more and more things that we're like, oh, these are also going to be affected by that as well. Yeah.
Well, you have the park rangers, taking care of this and looking at this. You have scientists, but I also heard that you have like the world's best engineers that are also looking at this. And I believe they're animal informed. Can you tell us a little bit about one of your favorite animals and how it is almost an indicator of some of this rising temperatures, melting glacier thing?
So, well, one of the things, it's kind of one of my favorite animals is a beaver. And one thing that kind of, we talk about water and having that cold meltwater and holding water on the landscape. Water is so important here in Glacier National Park and everywhere. And we also have, luckily we do have beavers in the park. They are pretty cool. You've probably heard of them. You've probably heard that they can, build dams and lodges and all of that. But they're building dams that also helps to hold water on the landscape. So even though, it might not be that cold glacier meltwater, as cold, that can help this landscape be more resilient. So having beavers on the landscape, there's a project on the nearby Blackfeet Nation that is working to kind of build beaver dam analogs to, again, help hold water on the landscape to make sure that there's water, again, later in the season when we need it. Here's a beaver pelt. So they were, valued for their pelts. And you've heard of like the fur trade and stuff. There's a lot fewer beavers in North America than there would have been without the fur trade. Luckily, we still have a good amount of beavers here at Glacier National Park. So they were also part of, like, after the glaciers carved the landscape, there weren't as many like nutrients and things like that for soil. So beaver ponds and beavers also helped to make this landscape what it was or what it is. And, that's one thing that as we look toward ways that we can be more resilient to change, we can look toward beavers for kind of inspiration and, maybe even the beavers themselves for helping to, again, hold that water on the landscape and make it so that this landscape can be more resilient to those changes. And here, here's a beaver
hold it
pelt.
up a little bit because this beaver has some really cool adaptations. This long tail, right? Yeah. So can we talk about that for just a moment?
We can talk about that. Yeah. And I was going to say,
actually, I've always wanted to be a beaver.
And luckily,
I like all the things. I have a long flat tail sometimes.
Well, you've got
So
that.
yeah, but I would like to become a beaver. Is that possible? Can
Yeah,
I
we've
be
got
a beaver.
we've got some things for you. So I think I'll have Ranger Emily, if you can help me and
Yeah.
hand me some things. We'll start with the tail.
Okay.
So
Here's
Daisha, if you're
a
a
beaver
beaver
tail.
or Dr. Drizzle, you need a tail. So we have this tail. Let me kind of extend this, and you can strap that around your waist.
So this is what I'm going to do.
Let's
Going
see.
to, yeah, we're good.
We'll buckle it there. So that tail is going to help you move through the water. So again, beavers, they both kind of, oh, looks great. Excellent.
There we go. Got a little
Ready
tail
to
going
swim.
on.
Yeah, so you can swim, so you
Yeah.
can swim, you can move around in the water, kind of helps you with the balance and stuff like that. And you know, because you're swimming around in the water, you're also creating these like beaver ponds and like
Right.
landscapes with more water, again, holding that water on the landscape. So you've got the tail. What other, I guess, pieces of the beaver do you think would help you swim around?
Maybe the little feet.
The feet, yeah. So beaver feet, they are pretty cool. I've got these flippers to represent them. Daisha, why do you think we use flippers to represent those beaver feet?
I'm thinking that it has some great surface area, so we
Yeah.
can sort of paddle and move through.
Exactly. So yeah, we've got that surface area, and the beaver, they have kind of webbed feet. So they have webbing that we're going to represent with this. So Daisha, I can give those to you. You can
Put
just
these-
stand on top of them.
Yeah, they're a little small, but
Yeah.
we'll put
Okay.
those on.
So we got flippers. You also are gonna need to be able to see underwater. Daisha, have you gone swimming in the water? Can you see too well?
No, I need to sort of
Yeah. So just beavers, they don't have, you know, goggles, but they have, we're gonna use goggles to represent it. They actually have, and you can kind of put these on your forehead if
This
you want.
is going to be attractive. I'm really excited
Yeah.
about this. Kids, I hope you're doing pictures of this and sending your sketches in. So let's just do the whole thing.
Yeah, and you can put them up, you can keep them up there if you want, or you can put them there. Oh,
I
perfect.
like them here.
And
yeah.
that's a great double. Yeah, so you have your glasses, your goggles, because they actually have 2 pairs of eyelids.
Nice.
So they have kind of a see-through eyelid that they can bring
Dictating.
down to be, to be able to see through and be able to kind of have those goggles to swim around.
So salamanders and frogs also have those same things. So we're crossing species here.
Perfect. Yeah, lots of these adaptations, these animal adaptations that allow animals to survive in their habitats. Some of them are, in common with other animals that have similar habitats.
Don't let me fall in the
Ranger
water.
Emily,
'Cause
I
I
guess
can't see.
have
Daisha,
your
you're
flippers,
going
you'll
to
be
be
okay.
needing to help, help these beavers out with keeping water on the landscape, creating, dams and stuff like that. So I think, are your teeth ready to help chew down some trees?
I'm going to need something bigger.
Okay, we've got some beaver teeth here.
Oh,
So they're nice and orange. They got iron in them, and that's actually that same iron is the oxidized iron is why some
So
of the
this
rocks
is
are red.
such a glamorous
Yeah.
job.
Looking good.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got your teeth, and I'll give you a stick as well. And it's a little warm, so I won't make you put on like a big jacket, but the beaver fur also is, nice and fluffy underneath. They got
Right.
2 layers of fur. Ranger Matt, can I grab the
Yes.
pelt back from you? So yeah, we've got 2 layers of fur, the nice fluffy one underneath, and then the waterproof. So if you were wearing a nice big winter jacket, then you'd be good to go on that.
I love it.
So yeah, what do we think of the Rangers? Does Daisha, does she look good enough?
Does it look
to,
okay?
I think it looks great.
She's ready to join the creek.
Yeah, we
Join
got
the
the
beaver
creek.
colony over there. Yeah.
Yeah, so it is cold because I stuck my hands in it earlier.
Very.
So we like to have myself kiss something.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking
Ooh.
a beaver kissing a beaver
Oh,
might
yeah.
be fun. And then maybe we have another animal. So let's go
Let's
ahead
see.
and get this. So come on
How
up.
can I
I
hold
hope
it
I
up?
don't end up like you, but oh, it's easier with my teeth.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm feeling? Do you hear that? Do you hear it? There's a little beat happening.
Ooh.
I hope you're hearing that.
Oh.
Because I feel like
Oh.
we're going to be doing the beaver dance.
Oh my gosh. the beaver-
Yes.
I'm so
So
excited.
kids, I want you to stand up. Make sure your teachers are giving you permission to stand up. And we're going to be doing the beaver dance. And we're going to be doing 3 different movements. One of the movements is going to be your tail shake. So you're going to be doing this because that little beaver tail is moving. And then we're going to have the paddle.
Ooh.
And then we're going to have the crunch. So I hope you're ready for this. So stand up. I'm going to go through it once. We've only practiced it no times. We're making it up as we go. So let's get ready for this. So beaver swimming, everybody, woo, woo. So now we're using our paddles, paddle, 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 tail, 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 paddle, 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 and turn around. We're shaking it. We're moving the water. We're shaking it and turn around back to the front. Now pick up your log in both hands and munch, munch, crunch, crunch, munch, munch, crunch. And now we're going to give everybody a different movement. So whatever movement you want, choose it. So you're either going to be a tail shaker or a swimmer or a muncher. So Matt, I'm gonna choose for you.
Okay.
You're gonna be a tail shaker. So
I knew
turn
that
around.
was gonna happen.
Yeah. And you are gonna be paddlers.
Okay.
And I'll be a muncher.
Good.
So
You got this
here comes the music. So teachers, you can sort of keep beat. Let's keep beat around here. Yes, we're keeping a beat. Here we go. And move it, move it. Beaver, beaver, build those dams. Move it, beaver, beaver, build those dams. Everyone say, we love beavers.
We love beavers.
So I'm going to start undressing a little bit here.
Okay. Well,
I will keep the.
I guess you can't stick around in like McDonald's forever, so
I
you know,
can't
gotta.
stick around. Oh, the Rangers have all the puns. We love
Oh
those.
man.
So I noticed that you had another animal over there that's
Oh
kind
yeah.
of interesting.
Oh, while
So
you
can
still
we
got the
talk
teeth on.
about that
Yeah.
since I still have the teeth on?
So this is a wolverine. They're actually another one that might be impacted, as we get less winter snowpack, as we, the glaciers shrink. They rely on having a lot of snowpack for their dens, so they can have their young. And so this is a wolverine. They're super cool. They've got these huge feet that act like snowshoes. And yeah, they're an animal that depends on all that snowpack, the glaciers, all of that up in the mountains. And we have some of them at Glacier National Park. I've never seen one.
I haven't either. They're pretty rare to get to see, and they live way up at the top there and can go over snow with these giant snowshoes.
And
But
they actually have some cousins over in Olympic National Park. The Wolverines are coming back. So these are a little more dangerous. Like you kind of hear that the Wolverines, So I'm going to be a little brave here, but bring it
all
up.
right, Lindsay, here you go.
Here we go. Would not recommend doing this
Yeah, don't
in
do this.
person.
And I noticed that we've got some things covering up the teeth so I don't get bitten. Love it. A Wolverine and a beaver, 2 animals in one day. My husband is so jealous back there. Mr. Drizzle's back there. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to take these teeth off. Now,
Okay.
before we talk a little bit more about glaciers, I would like to have just a moment and see if there are any other animals that we might find here. And can we talk about those as they come up on the screen? We'll just let you guys work on that. So here's the first one. Now, obviously it's a bear, but it's a different type of bear, right, Matt?
Yeah, that's correct. That's a grizzly bear. So I think one unique thing about Glacier National Park, as far as the lower 48 states go, there's not too many places left where you can see grizzly bears and black bears in the same habitat. Glacier National Park is one of those places and is also part of a larger ecosystem we call the Crown of the Continent ecosystem, where there's still provides the habitat grizzly bears need and can survive here.
And then we have this beautiful animal.
Ooh, a moose.
Moose.
These ones, the moose, they're so cool. What I think is awesome about moose, again, you can tell I love water and lakes and all of that. And, it's so important for the ecosystem here. And moose do too. So they have their nice long legs. They can walk around in the water. They really like to eat aquatic plants that are kind of growing under the water. And they can swim as well and swim through the water. And that helps them stay safe from predators. It helps them stay cool in the summer because they need kind of cooler temperatures and all of that. So yeah, moose are pretty cool. I have seen some of them. I just saw one a couple weeks ago over on the east side of the mountains in the park here.
Nice. So thinking about animals, we've talked about beavers. So if you're in your journal now writing down beavers, wolverines, we also have grizzly bears, we have moose. And then Emily, we have something else here. Can you talk about this for a moment?
Oh yes, this is perhaps our most seen animal in the park. Just a little guy about this tall, surprisingly loud for as small as they are, but this is called a Columbian ground squirrel. And they are master hibernators. So bears sometimes wake up from their hibernation, but not these guys. Columbian ground squirrels sleep for 8 months of the year. They slow down all their body systems and they burrow in and store up lots of fat over the summer. And then just survive off of that in the wintertime. So you'll likely to see them running around, scurrying. They have a really loud kind of squeak where they call and signal danger to each other. But one thing that's really important, especially with cute little animals, sometimes visitors get the wrong idea and think that they can help them out and give them a snack. It's actually really bad for the animals, and if they don't get the right kind of food, they won't make it through that long winter. So we want to encourage everyone who visits here to let the wild animals stay wild and find the food that they need here in the park.
And I'll add, that is why we did not have Dr. Drizzle kiss a ground squirrel, is because even though I mean, obviously you don't want to get close to wolverines either. We want to give all the animals their space. But with the ground squirrels in a lot of national parks, including I think here, by number of injuries, that's the most dangerous animal, because people are, feeding them. They're like trying to, bite people's fingers. So protect yourself and the squirrels by not feeding them.
Right, and
Yeah.
it becomes a habit, right? So
Yeah,
they're going to
exactly.
expect something. They're going to come up to you. We know at Grand Canyon, it's a huge problem
Yes.
for people sitting on the rim, on the rock walls, where the squirrels, even if you're not offering now, they come up and try to take your food because someone else has decided not to be a good human and take care of the animals. Now, also, we have another type of bear here, Matt, the black bear.
That's right.
Same thing. We can't leave our food out for this, right? Let's see a picture of this.
Yes. Yeah. So there's a saying, well, probably throughout parks that have bears, a fed bear is a dead bear. So once bears start to become used to eating human food, they, like you were just talking about the squirrels, then maybe will expect it or could increase conflict between bears and people. And so that's something I know Glacier takes very seriously and has a really, I would say, solid bear management plan where, we get over 3 million visitors a year, and the last estimate was somewhere about 1,000 or roughly like 900 bears between black bears and grizzly bears living in the area. And yeah, most summers there's hardly any interactions between humans and bears. So I think we've done a really good job here in the park with that.
Absolutely. Now, this next animal is going to live up a little higher, and we're going to be talking about a little bit more about glaciers in a few minutes. But Lindsay, talk about this.
Yeah, this is a bighorn sheep. So one thing that I sometimes, when I'm thinking about, sheep versus a moose, is that moose have antlers that they lose every year. But the bighorn sheep, these giant curled horns, they're horns. So that means, they stick around, they have them their whole lives. They don't fall off every year. And you can tell how old a bighorn sheep is by how many kind of like sections the horns have. And yeah, they live up at high elevations. They need to be up at those high elevations where it's a little bit cooler. And that's another one where, we want to give them a lot of space because they get stressed if people are nearby. And we actually have a bark ranger who's a dog that helps to make sure that is trained and kind of make sure that the bighorn sheep and mountain goats and stuff aren't coming into the parking lots, and that we're kind of keeping humans away from them and keeping them kind of in their areas so that they can continue to survive. So yeah, we've got those bighorn sheep. They're so cool to see, especially if you bring binoculars with you. It's really fun to watch them from a distance.
Yeah, and this is something
Yeah.
that kids may not be able to see in their own
Oh, yeah.
communities. Now, we do have all types of birds and eagles and loons, but this last animal has a lot of great adaptation. So, Emily, let's talk about this guy.
Yeah, this is the mountain goat. Lives in that same habitat as the bighorn sheep and also has horns that stay on for its entire life. But these guys are pretty iconic. They're the symbol of Glacier National Park because their specialized hooves are really, really good like suction cups to help them grip into rock. They can like spread themselves out and be braced against two rock walls just so they can reach a little spot of salt to lick. They're excellent climbers, and one of my favorite things about them is the way they get dressed for winter. So if you see a picture, I think the picture we have up there, it's in its summer coat right now, but in the wintertime, they have a super long, super shaggy winter coat. They're one of the few animals that stays awake and active high up in the mountains.
Nice.
So they're really, really excellent climbers, and part of the history of the park too. One of the first ways that folks first came to Glacier Park as tourists was on a train, and the train chose as their logo the mountain goat to come on the Great Northern Railway and see Glacier Park. So when you see a goat, that's a symbol of Glacier Park.
Nice. Well, before we get to our challenge for today and our questions, I want to talk just a little bit more about climate change. And how is climate change affecting Glacier Park and the communities around it?
Sure. Yeah, so we've talked a lot about geology. We talked a lot about the animals that live here, and Glacier is known for its biodiversity, and our freshwater ecosystems play a big role in making that possible. And that water just doesn't stay in Glacier National Park. It flows outside of the park. And so we're looking behind us here at Lake McDonald. That water, depending where you're at in Glacier National Park, the water that flows out of the park feeds into 3 major watersheds throughout North America. So we're on the western side of the Continental Divide where we're standing right now. So Lake McDonald will flow into Lower McDonald Creek, into the Flathead River, into the Columbia River, and eventually out into the Pacific Ocean over in Oregon. If you could drive over to Lake St. Mary on the east side of the Continental Divide, those waters there flow out into the Missouri and the Mississippi rivers and eventually out into the Atlantic Ocean. And there's even one spot in Glacier where water will flow north up into Canada, so up into the Nelson River, the Saskatchewan River, and some of that water will make its way into the Hudson Bay. So the water and those watersheds connect this place to a large portion of North America.
Which means we need to keep these waters clean.
Oh,
Well, sure. Yeah,
absolutely.
water clean. And that's, the future of Glacier's water is uncertain. I mean, Lindsay talked a lot about the glaciers and the situation they're in. And so despite, I think, your view on climate change, I think one thing everybody recognizes is the value and the importance of fresh water. And so we're looking at kind of a shift in our precipitation rate, if you will, or pattern, I think is probably a better word, where a lot of that historically has came from snowfall, and now we're starting to see more rainfall. So that's gonna, like Lindsay said, talked a little bit about water being distributed throughout the landscape. That changes that impact how that will be distributed.
We love to work with our indigenous peoples of the national parks, and our former director, Sam's, talked about how important it is for us to recognize that this is all our land. It belongs to us. We need to be taking care of it. And they also say water is life. I
Mhm.
noticed on the way into the campground, there's a little station called AIS, and I'm thinking that's aquatic
Aquatic invasive
species. Yep.
So
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you probably check watercraft for anything that's come in from someplace else. This lake opens in 3 days.
Yeah.
It opens this
Mhm.
weekend for watercraft. So protecting this water, making sure that you're not bringing in things from other bodies of water, because we want to keep this clean. People depend on it to drink. Animals depend on it. And I think more important, we need to remember that maybe we're not wearing the flat hat, but we are stewards of this land. So I think that's going to take us to our challenge for today. So our challenge is this. We want you to create a nature-based solution that helps your own community become more resilient to this climate change or these rising temperatures. In San Juan, Puerto Rico, we talk about how kids can be involved with creating new types of materials to protect the fort, protect their home, because they're getting more and more hurricanes and water related things. So here, what can you learn from these 3 amazing rangers? Maybe you want to find a way, let's go back to the challenge for just a moment, a way to reduce erosion and protect your own local rivers. It's important to find out where your watersheds are in your community. Maybe you want to talk about a reforestation or a greening project where you can go out and plant butterfly gardens, or you can work on a trash pickup. You might also consider an accessible nature trail. Some of our trails, walkways, San Antonio Missions, for example, a lot of the water there gets under the mission, the actual buildings and the trails, and it breaks it up. How can we provide this? So think about what's happening in your own area. Are you seeing extreme weather? Are you experiencing habitat loss? And how can you create something based on what you've learned today? How can you change your community? Well, that is a lot of stuff we have talked about. So I'm going to ask our moderators, Ms. Schwanekamp and Ms. Brown, if there are any questions in our chat today.
I will tell you, we have a couple shout outs. First of all, Miss Neal's class came on camera to show the beaver dance and they killed it. And Mrs. Homan's class, before you guys even really started talking about glaciers forming the landscape, they knew the answer. So I thought that was really awesome. A couple of questions. We're sad to hear that the glaciers are melting and disappearing. Can you tell us the largest one in the park and like tell us in relation to, like it's about as big as something. And then another one would be for each of the park rangers to share their favorite part of their job.
Yeah, so let's just repeat that question. If we think about what the largest glacier is here, remember that chunk of slow moving ice, right? What's the largest one here? And let's compare it to something like 3 football fields or a mountain somewhere. So who wants to grab that one?
I can take that because I have here, so rangers don't always know the answers to everything. And I have a pocket reference guide that rangers often keep in our pockets. And I have a list of all the active glaciers in the park. This is the one from last year, and it has just the 2015 size. But I think Ranger Emily talked a little bit about how big a glacier has to be moving. And so 26 acres, which is, again, I think a football field is a little more than an acre. So, you know, like 25 football fields or so. To be considered a glacier, but a lot of them are way bigger than that. They also have to be like kind of a certain thickness. So we often think about that like about 100 feet thick to be considered a glacier, which is like a 10-story building. So imagine a building that you can think of that's pretty tall, about 10 stories, and how high you'd have to look up in order to see, you know, the top of that. That's how thick a glacier has to be.
And just another comparison, the Statue of Liberty is 305 feet and 1 inch tall.
Ooh,
so that would be 3 times higher than that minimum,
minimum, yeah,
that
so
they
a lot.
need. So what is the biggest one here?
Yeah, so the biggest one here is Harrison Glacier. And as of 2015, when they last did kind of the satellite image survey, and we don't know the exact thickness of this one, because again, it's one where we're kind of measuring it by that satellite imagery, but it was about 410.6 acres. So that's a lot of football fields.
That might be all the NFL teams,
Yeah.
all of the college teams, and a big number of high school
Yeah.
football
Oh my
stadiums.
gosh.
So we want you to figure that out. How many football stadiums, and maybe you can even name those with your favorite
yeah.
teams.
But it's kind of interesting because I mean, Emily was mentioning the glaciers today are a lot smaller than the glaciers that carved these landscapes, but they're still pretty big. So I think sometimes, you know, it's like, oh yeah, they're tucked up in the mountains, but especially if you see one up close or realize, you know, again, that's so many footballs we're putting together that these glaciers are still pretty big because the mountains are pretty big.
Nice.
Yeah.
What was that other question, Miss Schwanekamp?
Okay, so there's 2 more now. One was favorite part of Park Ranger Emily and Park Ranger Lindsay and Park Ranger Matt's job. And then Miss Homan's class asked another really good question. How do we help save the glaciers? And then she said, oh, I have a student named Harrison. He'll always remember this glacier now.
Right. Well, let's do that one first. Whichever one. What can we do? What can those students do in their classrooms to help save glaciers?
Well, I mean, Daisy, you asked me earlier, like the impact climate change is having on the surrounding communities. I think glacier can have a positive impact as well. I mean, we get people just like you all out there connecting with us from all around the world, learning about the natural world here in Glacier, becoming inspired by this place. And I think, you know, continuing to do that is a big part in helping protect glaciers. I think taking what you've learned here, taking your experiences in the natural world, the experience from today, taking that and applying it to where you live in your daily lives, making those positive choices to respect and protect the environment, as I think that's something we can all do no matter where you're at, what age you are. And I think kind of like those sedimentary rocks, right? Little choices like that will pile up and hopefully lead to a big difference.
I love that. And it doesn't matter what age you are. So these
That's
kids
correct.
watching today can be the impact that could keep this 26 for a long time, right? Emily, what's the favorite part of your job as a park ranger?
Yeah, my favorite part, especially working in education, is getting to see students make a connection or get really excited about something. I love that I get paid to keep learning. I love to learn, and it's really fun when students realize something or find something cool out in the woods or here on the lakeshore, and they say, Ranger Emily, look at this. I never knew this before. Or they get really excited. So watching people appreciate these spaces, because these parks belong to you guys. They belong to everybody, and seeing people really appreciate them. And like Matt said, the more you learn about not only Glacier, but your local environment, that's the first step to protecting and caring about that place, is to learn more about it.
What about you?
You know, I mean, I think what Emily said is like a really important part of it. And again, I love seeing people connect with this landscape. But one thing I've been thinking about a lot recently is I love to see this place as it goes through changes in the season. Because I think that's one thing where a lot of people think about Glacier National Park and they think of the summer and driving over, going to the Sun Road, but getting to work and take students out and do all these things. We do snowshoe field trips in the winter. It's just been amazing, especially in the spring. I was noticing the other day just how many more leaves there are on the plants, and getting to see this place change throughout the year and just really getting to know a place. And I know I moved around and worked at other national parks before I ended up here, and kind of that chance, no matter how long you're at a park, working at a park, to get to know it and to get to know, like, just, I don't know, all this in-depth knowledge just through observation, which you can wherever you are, observing the places around you, whether it's, you know, your backyard, your school yard, anything like that. And then to be able to share that and learn about it, and then, you know, bring that to other people and help them to, you know, get excited about it.
Nice. And Matt, what about you?
Well, they've taken a lot of my answers, but,
I did
but
that
no,
on
I,
purpose.
no, I think the only thing I'll add is, you know, I feel Glacier is a great place to work, and I feel really fortunate to be a part of our education team with Lindsay and Emily and the other staff we have. But I mean, we get to bring a lot of students out to the park each year. I don't know, upwards probably like 10,000 closely we reach every year. You know, a good portion of those are people like students coming to the park. So being out with students, having students in the park every day has really helped me see like the value of our work and the importance of what we do. So it's been really nice.
You mentioned something about bringing kids to the park, right? So I want to talk about just the park itself for just a moment. So this is the symbol, the emblem for the National Park Service. It is an arrowhead. It has so many connections. I want you to do a quick sketch of this, if you will. But everything on here has a purpose. It talks about the environment, the resources, the animals, the indigenous, the history, the culture of this. National Park Service is why we do what we do. These amazing rangers, and we have filmed at over 200 national parks. We have been in live streams all over the country. You get to visit these places because of Crossing America, because of these rangers that say, yes, we'll help. But also the National Park Foundation has done such an amazing job. This is season 4 with the National Park Foundation, and they said, hey, you guys do things and go make things happen for us and bring so many kids to the parks. Over 100,000 students in the last couple of years have visited parks because of your willingness to say yes. The individual parks said yes, and the National Park Foundation gave us the funding to do that. So I'm going to be sending out an email, and if the moderators have it, we want you to drop it into the chat window. We have a Thank a Park Ranger project happening right now. And as of last count, we have about 48,000 notes, cards, letters, postcards, emails, and texts that have been sent to national parks. We want to thank these guys. We want to thank Emily, and we want to thank Lindsay and Matt, but we want to thank Kelly from last week and Sophia, and we want to thank Ranger Jen and Ranger Jennifer and Yvette and all these people that are putting themselves out there to not make a lot of money, but to make a difference. And I think that's the biggest thing I want us to think about. So if you can, with only about a month left of school, let's start writing more letters, and let's thank these amazing people, because they get to hang out with me, which is really cool, but we get to hang out with them, which is even more cool. I'm going to ask Ms. Schwannekamp if she has any more questions in the chat window before we wrap up our amazing day here at Glacier.
I don't see anything, and we just dropped the link for the Thank a Ranger project. So take a couple of minutes and thank these amazing people for the work they're doing.
Absolutely. Well, I have a couple things I want to do before we leave here today. This lake behind us is gorgeous. It is flat, it is beautiful, and it reminds me of rock skipping. So back in the day when we would go camping with my family, my dad would show us how to pick up the best flat rocks, which we've already got our flat rocks ready. And then he would stand at the side of the water and sideways throw this rock, and hopefully we'll get it to skip. Now, the Guinness Book World Records is 88 skips.
Oh my goodness.
One of our tech people tried that this morning. He got 4. So I think we're staying all night to see if he can win it. But let's see if we can do that. So let's get our rocks.
your beaver tail is still on might help you stabilize and like be
I'm
ready to.
thinking that might be helping. Now, don't get in my way.
Okay,
okay.
I'll give you some space.
Give me a little space here. So on the count of 3, we're going to throw these and we're going to kind of see who's going to win this. All right. 1, 2, 3. Wow, you see that? We had so many skips out there. So here's what I'm going to leave you with. When you drop a pebble into water, you see a little ripple, right? And if you keep dropping those pebbles and other people join you, the ripple effect gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's how we can fight climate change. And that's how we can make sure that kids know about these public lands. And that's how we can be good humans. So on behalf of the National Park Foundation, Expeditions in Education, Glacier National Park, these amazing rangers, and our behind the scenes tech people. So come on out, Macy, and come on out, Bree. These are Montanian residents that came with us to help with props and time. You know, we have Dave and Steve behind the camera, but if they left, the thing would shut down. So we can't have them. So on behalf of all of these guys, be a good human. Finish the year out strong. Be kind to one another. Take care of each other. Make sure that what you do makes a difference. And we will see you next year, next school year. So let me show you one quick slide. We want you to be thinking about, where do you want us to go in 2025 and 2026. During the school year, we're going to go to 7 to 10 more live streams. Where would you like to see us come in a national park near you? So again, on behalf of all of my friends here, we're going to say goodbye, and we're going to leave you with a little beaver dance. Shake the tail. We love you guys. We'll see you next year. Bye-bye, everyone.